There's no possible way that they would have tried to make fascist accusations against Mitt Romney. That's my favorite one.
That one looks real. That one looks like
Hitler aged.
So I know that you've heard this, but just to refresh your memory and so that you can believe your lion eyes and lion ears, they have referred to Donald Trump as Hitler or a fascist millions of times. They try and defend themselves by saying, but we haven't made this comparison before. I'm going to prove to you that it is actually a requirement to running an electoral campaign for a Democrat candidate. But let's start with Trump.
The political violence is a prelude to fascism.
Yeah. Please stop it with voting for Trump. It was funny for a little while, but the guy is Hitler.
Former President Trump has praised Adolf Hitler.
Trump also admired Nazi officers' loyalty to Hitler.
We have to acknowledge the authoritarian nature of Donald Trump.
Mr. Trump responded to that criticism and also the criticism that he's Hitler-esque.
Trump is a clear and present danger to American democracy.
Yeah. Donald Trump quotes Adolf Hitler. He praises Nazis at Charlottesville as very fine people. He hosts a Nazi Holocaust denier for dinner at his home.
A unified Reich? That's Hitler's language. That's not America's.
If you're doing something illegal, if you're trying to punch a Nazi, then you don't want police to be able to identify you.
You guys have to pull it back. This is not us or them. This is you got to stop doing what you're doing, JD, and what you're doing, Mr. T.
Mr. T?
Mr. T? That's an insult? She just made Donald Trump seem even cooler.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there he is. Yeah.
I pity the fool.
Always have a plan.
You should go up as a giant chain to come on. You ain't so bad. It's my prediction. Pain.
There's not a Trump vent now.
That should be a shirt.
Yeah.
It should be a shirt. It should say D-Team behind him. Well, that could be misconstrued, actually.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's perfect. He's Mr. T. He is the scarier fight than Apollo Creed. You thought Mitt Romney was tough? This Trump will knock you to tomorrow, kid. And by the way, don't even entertain the idea of it. This is a litmus test for me. If you have somebody who says, well, they haven't said this about other Republicans, this really is unique. Trump is a different breed. Anyone who buys that or anyone who tries to sell you that line of horse crap is someone who is not to be trusted. I hope I've clarified that for you because you hear it all the time. It's just a weak defense. And they're hoping you don't do the research. Now you'll hear this. Well, we're only saying it about Trump. He's not like the old Republicans who we supported. Or at least we had differences back then. We didn't hate them, the other Republicans.
This is not your father's Republican Party.
Well, I have to ask you about your dad, George Romney, who was, of course, the governor of Michigan. He also ran for president. You have called him your life's hero. What would he think about the state of the Republican Party today?
Oh, he would not understand it. He would not believe it.
It is overwhelmingly clear that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement have successfully purged the dissident factions of the Republican Party, particularly any old vestiges of the Republican Party.
Today's GOP has no principled core, no sense of right and wrong.
It's shocking that one of America's major political parties, the one founded by Abraham Lincoln, has now wrapped itself around lies, propaganda, conspiracy theory, and disinformation.
The Republican Party has left Ronald Reagan.
Okay. So that implies that they don't have any vestiges of right and wrong. That implies that back in the day, you treated them as simply political adversaries who had a sense of right and wrong, right? All right, let me take you back in time for a second. The least Hitler of the bunch. None of them are quite Hitler. Barry Goldwater, 1962. Yeah. They used the same attacks back then. Here's 1962, all references, and I highly encourage you to go check them out because we had to be selective. Goldwater won the Republican nomination, right? The California Governor Pat Brown said, "The stench of fascism is in the air." Jackie Robinson on Goldwater said, "I would say that I now believe I know how it felt to be a Jew in Hitler's Germany." MLK Jr. Jeez. That's the abbreviation, Martin Luther King Jr. He said that Goldwater's program had dangerous signs of Hitlerism. So we could go back. I bet you we could go back further to even before Hitler, and they were still saying it.
Yeah, there's probably a book out now, Abraham Lincoln and his Hitler-esque ideology.
Right. So Goldwater, okay, Hitler. Let's keep on moving down the trail because remember, they're saying, well, we haven't said this about other people. The old Republican Party, right? We had disagreements. All right, then let's go to the landslide election winner, Richard Nixon.
That music with the peace signs is just hilarious.
Constantly branded Nazi, fascist, especially in the Vietnam War era. You can just see this everywhere. It was the go-to, was the swastika.
The X is easy.
With Nixon.
It's right there.
1972, during Watergate, which we've done a whole installment on that in a 3 for 3. If you don't listen, you can check it out. George McGovern said that it was the kind of thing you expect under a person like Hitler, which doesn't even make sense because it's two rubes who unsuccessfully bugged someone's room, and Nixon didn't even know about it, and he was pissed when he found out. Even during the impeachment protest, which I don't know if you know this, then Nixon resigned. Not typical of a Nazi dictator.
You remember when Hitler quit?
Yeah.
You remember he said, you know what, guys, the heat's too hot.
You know what? I really wanted to kill all the Jews, but I feel like I have to do what's best to heal us as a nation, and I will voluntarily step down. I will step down. During the impeachment protest, here's a protester who dressed up like Nixon with Nazi salutes. There were people doing that. It was all over the place. Nixon is one of the most egregious examples. It was constantly Nazi, Nazi, Hitler, Hitler. But hey, maybe, okay, so not Goldwater, not Nixon, but we now can agree it's not just Donald Trump. Would it apply to every single Republican since Goldwater? Let's move on to someone who, at the very least, people could agree was likable, affable, a skilled communicator and diplomat, Ronald Reagan.
Doesn't get old.
In 68, here's the poster that called Ronald Reagan the fascist gun in the West.
Oh, really?
And that was a campaign to recall then Governor Ronald Reagan of California. Democrat Representative William Clay said that from Missouri said that Reagan was trying to replace the Bill of Rights with fascist precepts lifted verbatim from Mein Kampf.
What?
Whoa. It was in German?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
There was a writer, Harry Stein, and he wrote this in Esquire. Again, back then, the circulation of these publications were massive, bigger than any TikToker you can picture today. Wrote about Reagan voters actually saying that, like the good Germans in Hitler's Germany, so now not just Ronald Reagan, but compared all Reagan voters to Nazis. Here's another one, May 5th, 1985. Reagan was accused of honoring Nazis at a wreath-laying ceremony in Germany. Here's some context there. That exact same day, Reagan was actually honoring Holocaust victims at the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. So,
quite a mix-up.
Yeah. Think about that for a second. You have, Goldwater, Nixon, Reagan. We're going to keep on going down this trail. Josh, what are you doing?
I just I got to cut my mustache for the sketch later.
Why?
Because I don't want the mustache for the sketch. And this is bad timing, Tim. Come on.
Okay, well, finish it up.
You better do
the battery's
rest of it, Charlie Chaplin.
No.
Yeah, and by the way,
battery died.
That's the Office body trimmer.
Well, I've used it for other.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
It's okay. I'm sure you're fine.
There it goes.
Let's. What do we do? We went through Reagan. Who's next? Oh, that's right. We can pretty much just pick any national Republican candidate.
Yes.
Who's next? George H.W. Bush. So here's a poster that actually compared Bush Sr. to Hitler, saying that Bush was going to kill political opponents with AIDS.
Wow.
And by the way, just to be clear, I shouldn't have to provide this context, but he wasn't so much killing political opponents with AIDS, so much as people who, in general, opposed him were having unprotected anal sex with strange men in stalls.
Want to get AIDS? No. It said 3 million plus going to die. 3 million guys had AIDS? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no. You want to have sex in a porta potty? I strongly encourage you.
But I don't want to have sex with you, George. Yeah.
Well, too bad the president's making us.
Yes.
Josh, you really shaved your mustache. Yeah, it's for a sketch. I wasn't lying. It's for a sketch later.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was just bad timing. I didn't think you were going to put the camera on me.
Here's one that's even, so you have that. which is just hilarious. But again, you're talking about major publications. You have these books and these articles that were written to deliberately, in the public eye, connect the Bush family to Hitler's rise in Germany. So this here you have from The Guardian, how Bush's grandfather helped Hitler's rise to power. Jeez. And there was a 5-volume series of books. What? George H.W. Bush was Hitler's cousin.
That is...
Was he?
I don't think so.
I mean, even if
but he certainly wasn't a Hitler supporter.
No.
So this was ongoing with George H.W. Bush. Let's go down the family tree, or I guess up the family tree.
Is it?
Let's go George W. Bush Jr. Another one of those Nazis who also secretly works hand in hand with the Jews because he supports Israel.
Right.
It's weird. George W. Bush, and this is when I was becoming more politically aware. Obviously, I was younger. The first president that I can remember during my lifetime would be Bill Clinton, really, and then George W. Bush. And I was living in Canada. He was constantly portrayed as a Nazi. I mean, I was there for it. Remember, there was Rock Against Bush and NoFX and Rage Against the Machine and Green Day during that period of time, right? They said they were ashamed to be American. He had the same thing with the Dixie Chicks. But you had a lot of people comparing him directly to Hitler. Here's from 2004, the leftist group MoveOn.org. They ran ads against Bush that specifically featured Hitler. George Soros said this, who, by the way, actually was there arguably involved with Nazis at that point, pointing out Jews. You know, he says now that he didn't, but at one point he said he did.
Yeah.
He said the Bush administration and the Nazi and communist regimes all engaged in the politics of fear. Okay. There may be some truth to that because all politicians engage, right, in some kind of fear mongering, but Nazi communist regimes in the Bush administration. I have a lot of problems with George W. Bush. Still, I can say objectively, one of these things is not like the other. He then went on to say, indeed, the Bush administration has been able to improve on the techniques used by the Nazi and communist propaganda machines. So he improved on them by supporting Jews? I don't know that Hitler would say that's more effective, but hey, to the two Nazis left, you can comment below. Was George W. Bush more effective in implementing your agenda than the Fuhrer?
How many millions did any of these guys end up rounding up and putting in concentration camps and killing? Like,
it's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that.
Am I missing information from history? Did I read the wrong books?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because you talk about history. A D.C. school teacher during George W. Bush's tenure made students, and you could not find it covered, except I think this comes from the Christian Broadcasting Network. That's why we're using them as a reference. This teacher made children. The premise was, okay, the assignment is comparing George W. Bush to Hitler.
A sixth grade teacher in Washington, D.C. is apologizing after assigning students to compare Adolf Hitler with President George W. Bush. The teacher at McKinley Middle School told students to compare and contrast Bush and Hitler because both men abused their powers. At least one parent posted their outrage on social media and others agreed.
I don't think it was appropriate to make the comparison at all.
It's not appropriate for kids, especially at a young age.
I wasn't a fan of him, but I don't think it's really fair to compare him to Hitler.
George Bush doesn't care about black people. Please call.
The greatest reaction in the history of television.
Chris Tucker being like, what, he went to me?
Leave it on the white guy.
God, man, don't toss to me, man. You can't say George Bush didn't care about black people, man. Then you go to me. I only know what he says because I know the end of the phrase.
Every movie.
Kanye was gonna come up like Austin Powers, man. Something Austin Powers? All right. So people didn't like George W. Bush. And by the way, he was a wartime president. I think he made a lot of mistakes, just to be clear. I don't think he's Hitler. I also don't think that Barack Obama is Hitler. No. I think he's a socialist, so he has more in common with the National Socialist Party than American conservatives, but I don't think he's Hitler. I don't even think that Kamala Harris is Hitler.
I think Hitler would snub his nose at these people.
Yes.
They said not committed.
Yes. I just want to be very clear. But you know who I really, really don't think was Hitler?
Oh, yeah.
And now the left says, well, we never made these attacks against this guy because he's about as milquetoast as you can get, say for Mitt Romney. John McCain.
Maverick.
So now everyone kind of agrees this is the most moderate guy. I mean, you see his family even coming out. He would be ashamed of today's Republican Party. And you know what? He did seem like he was, a decent man in his personal life, if, not still a horrible, completely ineffective politician. But you may not remember this. McCain and Palin were directly branded as Nazis only 2 weeks before the November 8th election on, at this moment in time, one of the most popular shows in the country, Family Guy.
Hey, there's something on here. Huh, that's weird.
Yeah. Madonna herself, Brenda McCain Hitler, during her 2008 Sticky and Sweet tour, which is gross coming out of my mouth.
Well, she had sex with him, so she might know.
Well, she didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, she's like 105.
It's just a conveyor belt. So we have Goldwater, we have Reagan, we have Bush Sr., we have Bush Jr., we have McCain Hitler. There's no possible way. There's no possible way that they would have tried to make fascist accusations against Mitt Romney. That's my favorite one.
That one looks real. That one
looks like Hitler aged. Like if Hitler had survived, was 65 years old or something like that.
Well, of course you can see, I remember these images that of course existed back then, but the one that they really used with Mitt Romney was for some reason, and I had forgotten this, that he was a Soviet sympathizer.
What?
He was like a fascist, but then Barack Obama was up at the debates saying that when Mitt Romney was saying that Russia was a threat, saying, no, the 1980s called, they want the policy back.
Yeah, because he said they were the biggest threat in the world that we're facing. It was like,
they made him out to be a sexist, fascist, racist, right? Remember binders full of women?
Yes.
Mitt Romney. But now they say, actually, Mitt Romney wasn't that bad. Now they say, hey, Dick Cheney, there's an endorsement, right? That shows you that the Republican Party has changed. You called him Darth Cheney. I didn't even want to go through it because you know that Cheney was portrayed as Hitler. You well know that. There was an entire film made about how evil Dick Cheney was. And again, not a huge fan of Dick Cheney. I don't think he's Hitler. So we've seen it throughout the past, but here's something to keep in mind. If people are trying to disarm you when they say, well, no, not like the other Republicans, just Donald Trump. Okay, you've seen in the past that they've actually referred to all of them as Hitler. The only difference between a Republican or conservative being compared to Hitler and one who is not is the word yet. They aren't popular enough yet. They aren't effective enough yet. You reach a national stage or have an impact, and guess what? You will be called a fascist. You will be called a racist. And yes, you will be called the heir apparent to Hitler and a Nazi. How do I know? Because they've done this with anyone at this moment in time who they thought could even have the potential to be a national candidate. Just bring up the collage at this point because we're running late. Ted Cruz, Ron DeSantis, even Nikki Haley.
PCP Nikki?
Nikki Haley at the 2012 DNC, South Carolina Democrat Party chairman, was referring to then Governor Nikki Haley, said she was down in the bunker a la Ava Braun.
Oh.
By the way, interesting factoid, the chairman's name, Dick Harpootlian. Which is a great name for like a gay whaler.
Yeah. There ain't no better whaler than Harpootlian.
Harpootlian, go get the harpoon. Oh, but I'm tired. You're ashamed to the good art of harpooning.
If your father weren't at the bottom of the sea, he'd be so embarrassed of ye.
He'd be crying, but you couldn't tell the salty tears from the salty brine water, the foam.
It's good harpoon.
You've been given a gift by God, your last name, Harpootlian, and you can't harpoon with a lick.
He does whales and men.
Hey, but...
Hey...
That's a barbed harpoon, so I can't get away.
Double-ended harpoon.
Get over here. You know who else, by the way? You know how I know this? They will compare you to Hitler, and they will try and destroy your name. If you are effective. I don't know if you know this, but there's been someone else who, is pretty much a basic bitch conservative who supports life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, Israel's right to defend itself, and of course is pro-life, pro-First Amendment, pro-Second Amendment, basic stuff, who has also been compared to Hitler and been accused of being a fascist Nazi.
This guy's a fascist. Does anyone know that?
Why are you a gateway point for alt-right politics?
He just said the Nazis were right.
Yeah.
I mean, you would be the one in the 1930s who would definitely vote for Hitler.
For those who don't remember, this is, of course, the Crowder Confronts professor who accused me of being a neo-Nazi and posted false memes of me saying gas the Jews. Yeah. Yeah. Just to clarify, I've never once called to gas Jews.
I didn't think so.
In case you were still a little bit murky.
Are these the same people who called you a Jew?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So
Yes.
you're one of those weird Nazi Jews?
Yes, I'm one of those weird Nazi Jews.
Self-loathing, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is Ben Shapiro. He's one of those weird Nazi Jews.
Ah.
Just to be clear. And my point here is just don't allow the left to get away with, well, in this case, I mean, quite literally, get away with attempted murder when we're talking about Donald Trump, but don't allow them to get away with just memory holing what they've done. And the only reason they can do that is because, again, they don't fear any accountability. It's the same reason that Kamala Harris thinks she can get away with faking a new accent every other week, depending on her audience. No one's going to call her on it. And so when they come out right now, whether it's Brian Stelter, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, whoever it is, take your pick, or Kamala Harris herself, if they come out and say, well, this is different. This is not your father's Republican Party. I used to be able to work with these people back, and we just had disagreements. None of it is true. They're trying to give themselves some street cred so that you don't point out the fact that they themselves are totalitarian fascists who want to eliminate any voice of dissent. That's what you're really doing. Let's be really clear. When they call you Hitler, let me ask you this. Does Hitler deserve a seat at the table in the United States in American politics? Of course not. Hitler, at the very least, would have lost his right to vote for multiple felonies. And they weren't even on the line. They were very clear felonies, what Hitler did. So they are saying, you don't deserve a seat at the table. That's why you have Hillary Clinton coming out saying that we need potentially criminal, but at least civil prosecution for purveyors of misinformation online. She actually said this, I believe, just 2 days ago. She said anything that appears to be propaganda that could be coming from Russia, there should be perhaps criminal or civil charges. Oh, really, Hillary? You first. You quite literally enlisted the help of a firm who got information exclusively from Russia to push one of the worst political hoaxes in the modern era. What they are saying when they are comparing you to Hitler, to a fascist, to the Nazi regime, they are saying that you don't deserve a right to vote. They're also saying that when 28% of Democrats say, hey, this country would be better off if Donald Trump had been killed. Those 28% of Democrats and another 24% saying, I don't know, I'm not sure. They're saying you shouldn't have the right to vote for the man who won the primaries, even though ours didn't go through that process. All of this to defend democracy. I will tell you this, yeah, democracy is at stake. I agree with the left. I agree with the left on that. I would say our constitutional republic is at stake. Because if Kamala Harris were to be elected right now, and this would be the culmination of constantly accusing Donald Trump of being Hitler or being a criminal in a long line of doing that with all Republicans, you would have someone who verifiably has proven they cannot win any kind of a popular vote or electoral process without hundreds of millions of dollars and the media machine propping them up. Kamala Harris, anytime we've polled the audience, running a primary, he hasn't even come close. It's not possible. They want to silence you, one half of this country, with that same system and tell you who is going to be your leader. They call you and Republicans and conservatives Hitler, the same reason they call Donald Trump Hitler, and the same reason that close to 50% of Democrats don't know if our country would be better off if Donald Trump had actually successfully been assassinated. Today, the left does not want an election. They want a coronation. And you're standing in the way. And Donald Trump is seen as a representative of you. Hey, if you like this video, you should know that there are videos every day because they come from the full live show weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you want more of a sample, you can click this video next to me. I don't know what it is. Could be a change of mind. Could be a debate. It could be one of my appearances on The View. Have your puke bucket.